Hello my beautiful friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Liv, or Olivia if you are new here, and today I'm going to be sharing with you my personal fall TBR list. So this list has quite the variety of genres. I think I have middle grade, lots of fantasy of course, some thrillers, some horror. I think I even have a cozy. But besides that, some of these books are actually a little bit older. I was going through my shelves, pulling off all the fall books I can think of so I could put them on my TBR cart just to remind me that these are all the fallish books that I own throughout the rest of the year or the rest of this season. And there was quite a few that I realized I have had on my shelves for the beginning of my booktube career. So we have a lot to catch up on. I feel like if some of these I don't end up reading this year, they just need to go. But I have quite the variety here. We have some newer releases. I also have a lot of backlist books. Again, a lot of fantasy. But I should also mention this is my physical fall TBR. This does not include new releases that I'm planning to pick up later this month or in October or even November. These are just the books that I would love to get through that are physically on my shelves. Hopefully I don't accumulate anymore because I do not need any more. I hope you are able to find a new fall recommendation to add to your list. So yeah, I hope you find something new here, but let's just go ahead and dive right into the books. So I'm not going to be diving super in-depth about what each of these books are about, but mainly just telling you why they are on my list and why I think you should pick them up with me or convince you to try to read them too. But the first genre we're going to start out with is just your typical horror books. Horror to me is not super scary, it's not super crazy, but it's still spooky enough for me to consider it as horror. You guys know I'm typically more of a cozy fall girl than a horror fall girl, but these are some extra spooky books that I must get to. I'm going to mention these next two books together because I read her other one last year and just fell in love with it. I absolutely loved it, and that is Rachel Harrison. We have Such Sharp Teeth, and we also have The Return. This one came out before Cackle that I read last year, and this one came out after. So I would love to read The Return first. This one kind of gives me my best friend's exorcism vibes because we have a friend group. One of the friends goes missing, she comes back, and she's completely different than she was before. And it just sounds very similar to my best friend's exorcism. So I feel like this is going to be a very hard-hitting, spooky book, but I think I'm gonna love it. And this one obviously is a werewolf novel, which I've never really read anything like this before, but because it's Rachel Harrison, I just feel like I'm gonna absolutely fall in love with it. A young woman in need of a transformation finds herself in touch with the animal inside. That just sounds super creepy and super intense. I'm not even gonna finish reading the back of the book because I kind of just want to be surprised. She's moving back to her hometown and it looks like she's been through a lot of trauma. It's kind of making me think of Twilight because of the werewolf thing. I'm a little bit hesitant about this one because I have heard mixed reviews, but I know I'm just gonna love the writing regardless. The next one I have is quite the backlist title, but the main reason why I've held on to this is because of Raylene LeMay that does the Books Unbound podcast with Ariel Bissett. She recommends this book all the time for so many different things, and that is Into the Drowning Deep by Myra Grant, or as we know her, Shauna Maguire. I love the Wayward Children series. I love her writing. It's so atmospheric, and I can only imagine how spooky this one is. It has killer mermaids, it has Mariana's Trench, deep water, really spooky, scary things. I think this sister is looking for her other sister that disappeared. I've heard there's actually the siren or mermaid's point of view in this book as well, which is terrifying. So I'm just very intrigued by this one. I absolutely have to read it because I can predict this possibly being 5 or at least 4 stars for me. I apologize if there's any weird lighting change throughout this video. It is super cloudy. It's out of my control. Hopefully the lighting is okay. Hopefully you can at least hear me. But this next author that I want to talk about is one that I've quickly learned to love this past year. I love her fantasy. I love the way that she writes, and I basically will buy anything from her, and that is The Twisted Ones by T. Kingfisher. The way she writes is so captivating and so atmospheric. It's flowery, but not to the point where it's annoying or it's pointless or it's difficult to understand. I am going to read you the back of this one though, because it sounds absolutely terrifying. When Mouse's dad asks her to clean out her dead grandmother's house, she says yes. After all, how bad could it be? Answer: pretty bad. Grandma was a hoarder and her house is packed to the gills with useless garbage. That would be horrors enough, but there's more. Mouse stumbles across her stepfather's journal, which at first seems to be the ravings of a broken mind, until she encounters some of the terrifying things he described herself. Alone in the woods with her dog, Mouse has to confront a series of impossible terrors, because sometimes the things that go bump in the night are real and they're looking for you, and if she doesn't face them head on, she might not survive to tell the tale. I am itching to pick this one up. I've been itching to pick this up for years now. I can't remember when this came out, but it sounds like the perfect haunted house spooky vibe. I just want to read more from Kingfisher. I've never read a horror by them, and so I think it's going to be really good. The next book I would love to pick up for two reasons. The first one being a lot of people love this book. It's talked about nonstop. Second of all, it's gothic. That's literally all I need to know. And there's a haunted house, I think. So of course that's a plus. But that is the Hacienda. I am in love with this cover. I am obsessed. The inside just has so many buzzwords. Mexican Gothic, which I gave 3.5, 4 stars. I liked the writing. The concept was unique. It wasn't my favorite. But anyways, it says Mexican Gothic meets Rebecca in this debut supernatural suspense novel set in the aftermath of the Mexican War of Independence about a remote house, a sinister haunting, and the woman pulled into their clutches. Yeah, that just sounds right up my alley. I've never read anything by this author before, but I think she wrote The Vampires of El Norte. I think that was her new book. But she seems to have all these great gothic vibes in her book, and I think I could really possibly love this. So I need to finally pick it up. Okay, the next couple books I have are mystery thrillers, which I'm very excited about. During the fall, I'm always super into fantasy and mystery thrillers especially. I feel like this year I'm going to be in my cozy mystery era, but that does not negate the fact that I have a lot of mystery thrillers to still read. The first book I want to get to, I think, is the only young adult book on this list, but I have heard nothing but phenomenal things about this year after year. People keep giving it 5 stars, and I don't think I've ever read anything by this author either, but that is the Mary Shelley Club. I love this cover for one. Second, I'm a huge fan of Frankenstein. It's one of my all-time favorite like classic horror stories. I don't remember a lot about it, to be completely honest. This is definitely one of those books that's like the hype got to me, but the back does have club rules, which looks very interesting. It says the Mary Shelley Club is a secret. Everyone gets one fear test that all members must help execute. You must perform the task assigned to you, no exceptions. You must pick your target before the test starts. That's your 8 ball. You may scare everyone else in the room, but if you don't sink your 8 ball, you've failed the test. The game isn't over until everyone's had their turn, and fear test ends when your target screams. So that sounds like very intense club rules. I don't know what in the world it has to do with Mary Shelley, but it says a mysterious society of students who orchestrate elaborate pranks known as fear tests, and they're just known as the Mary Shelley Club. It sounds like it could definitely get pretty intense and pretty gory pretty quickly. I'm holding on tight for the ride that I'm sure is going to be this book, but I'm sure it's going to be phenomenal, and I absolutely cannot wait. Next, I would love to finally pick up another Simone St. James book. I read The Broken Girls and really loved the gothic creepy vibes of that one, and this one is like another haunted hotel setting, which sounds so creepy and amazing. There are 2 different timelines, which is what I love about the way Simone St. James writes. It says something hasn't been right at the roadside Sundown Motel for a very long time, and Carly Kirk is about to find out why. Next, I have another very beloved mystery thriller author that I continue to read. I continue to try her books. Sometimes they are a big hit and sometimes they are a big miss for me, and that is is Ruth Ware. The very few books that I own of hers and still have not read is The Death of Mrs. Westaway. I've heard this one is probably going to be one that I actually really do love though. Our main character gets a letter in the mail and she finds out that her grandma has left her this inheritance. I don't know what else happens from there. It definitely looks like there's a lot of creepy things going on. We have a tarot card reader. It says it's full of spellbinding menace with plenty of chills and a setting readers won't soon forget. I think that's what I'm most excited about is the setting. If I am just feeling a book that I just want to vibe with, I'm definitely going to be picking this one up. The next mystery thriller I have is a newer release and it's one that I really would love to pick up right now, right this second. It's not necessarily fall per se, but I do want to fit it in within my fall TBR this year, and that is I'm Not Done With You Yet by Jessie Q. Sutanto. I love this author. I feel like I've mentioned her so many times on my channel before. She's witty, she's funny, she's heartfelt, she's so humorous, and I just love the way she writes. This one is definitely giving off dark humor Killing Eve vibes. Apparently one of these girls is an aspiring writer and she really wants to reach back out to another one of her classmates that she used to be kind of obsessed with or kind of love and aspire to be, but unfortunately she's like disappeared off the internet. She's disappeared off the face of the planet basically. But one day I think a bestseller comes out and she sees her name and I think tries to hound her down. This definitely has those vibes of that kind of like odd dark obsession with someone, and I don't know, that's kind of my jam in my thrillers. I love it, so we're gonna see how this one goes. The next biggest stack of books I have is of course the fantasy genre. This is the time of year that I break out all the fantasy books. That's all I want to read, is I just want to get lost in another world going into a new season. There's just something so magical about that combination. But I thought I would start us off with the 3 books that are actually pretty old. They have been on my shelves not only for a while but just in the community for quite some time now, and I don't know why I haven't read them because I just need to. This has to be the year that I read them. The first one is an author I love and adore. I'm still on a journey to read all of her books myself, but that is The Dark Vault by Victoria Schwab. This is a bind-up of 2 of her older books called The Archived and The Unbound, but there is something to do with the magical library where everyone's thoughts or memories are stored at this library. Our main character is a girl and she's the caretaker of these people's memories, but it looks like these are all dead people's memories that she takes care of. It sounds really creepy and really good and just so atmospheric for this time of year. I feel like this was supposed to be turned into a trilogy at some point, so I hope there's not a cliffhanger. We will see how it goes. I might not read them back to back, but I would love to say that I have finally read this. Next, I have a book that I currently own the whole trilogy of, and I have not started the actual series. I know my friend Kendall is going to be super excited about this, as am I. It's been way too long. I need to read this, you guys. Out of all of these books, I have to read this one. Please hold me to it. That is Caraval by Stephanie Garber. There are many reasons why I want to read this, but the first one being this is just very nostalgic for me to look at. This book was very popular when I first started Bookstagram. Not only that, but one of my favorite books at the time was The Night Circus that I discovered that really sparked my interest for reading again. And the fact that this one has a sister dynamic, it's set at a magical circus, I think there might be a competition. I'm kind of avoiding like looking at the back, plus there really is not much of a synopsis, but I have heard amazing things. There's a reason that this author is so popular. I know it's going to be a great ride that I'm going to love, and I'm predicting 5 stars for this one. Next is a book that you may have never actually seen before. Maybe you've heard of this author before. I love this author. I've only read 1 book by her and I'm patiently waiting for something new, but that is A Great and Terrible Beauty by Libba Bray. Libba Bray writes some really deep, scary stuff. Like really deep and scary. This one takes place during the Victorian age where we have this girl that's sent off to like this boarding school. There's this mysterious man though that follows her, and I believe she has visions, maybe some type of magical power, but I do know that the main theme of this book is vampires, which is definitely new to me, but I've heard nothing but great things about this and I love this author's writing. So if anything, I know the atmosphere is going to be impeccable. I'm just going to be be over here reading this, patiently waiting for Libba Bray to come out with a new book. So Libba, if you're watching this, please hurry up and write your next book. And last but not least, this is another older title that I keep telling myself I'm going to read, and I put on so many TBRs, I think last year even, is Margaret Rogerson's Vespertine. This cover right here just screams fall to me. It screams spooky, it screams fantasy, and I think this is also another standalone, which is what I love about Margaret Rogerson. But this one I've heard is about demons versus nuns, but the only thing I know about our main character is that she, I think, is in charge of helping souls pass on to the next life, and I've heard so many people tell me that I'm going to give this 5 stars. So of course I need to figure out for myself if that's going to be true. This next book is going to come as no surprise. It's a new release. I've been waiting for this for years. That is House of Roots and Ruin by Erin A. Craig. Erin A. Craig writes some of the spookiest young adult, almost borderline fantasy like horror books that I've read. I have yet to read Small Favors, which maybe that should be on this list as well, but this one is the second to House of Salt and Sorrows. If you haven't read that one, please read that one. It's so creepy. It's like a 12 Dancing Princesses retelling, but make it spooky fantasy with like a black plague. I can't really say where the first one left off. I've heard you can read them alone, like you don't have to read them back to back. You could just skip straight to this one, but honestly this one does follow a sister from the first book, and a lot happens to that sister in the first book. This one is one that is top priority for me. The next book is one that I completely missed out on last year. I don't know how I didn't read this one or why I didn't. Everyone and their mother was reading it. Everyone was loving it. I have read Fable by Adrienne Young before, and it was just okay for me. So I'm hoping that Spells for Forgetting can really redeem this author for me. This one just looks like it's set in Seattle or in a spooky forest, or it just gives me kind of Twilight vibes in a way, and the inside just sounds so good. So many buzzwords. A deeply atmospheric story about ancestral magic and unsolved murder and a second chance at true love. I've heard this one is also great transitioning into fall. I want to say it takes place on the coast somewhere. I love a good forbidden love. That's one of like my favorite tropes, and I am so invested in this already. Next, we have another book that people still will not stop talking about. This is basically me just confessing to you guys as a fantasy reader all the fantasy books I have yet to read apparently, but one of the top books is Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. This is now a duology? A trilogy? No, I think there's 4 books now, but this one apparently is like Bridgerton but with fae, which I'm totally here for if I'm in the mood for just like a light, fluffy, atmospheric fantasy, something that's actually pretty short. I'm definitely gonna have this one on hand. And another book that absolutely blew up last year, don't know how I missed out on this one either, but that is Belladonna by Adeline Grace. But this one looks phenomenal. I've heard it's like a dark Secret Garden retelling, but also has Addie LaRue vibes, and it's gothic, it's dark. I think our main character even falls in love with Death himself, and that just intrigues me so much. I've heard the romance in this is pretty amazing, and if I'm in the mood for some romantasy someday, you can bet that I'm going to be picking this one up. Next, I have a book by an author who I think I'm going to love. I'm not really sure. I'm currently reading the Atlas 6, so I had to pick up Masters of Death by Olivia Blake. I feel like I'm going to really enjoy this, but I'm also scared because her writing is very much character development, atmospheric, but also the world building has been kind of lacking for me personally. So I'm excited to try something else by this author and see if this one works a little bit better for me. Also, look at these end pages. They're absolutely stunning. We have a lot going on in here. We have a haunted house. We possibly have some romance. I don't know what's gonna come of this book, but it sounds creepy and it sounds amazing. Okay, this next one, I'm gonna have all you Brandon Sanderson fans just plug your ears for a real quick second, because if you have been here for a while, you know that Mistborn was unfortunately not my jam. I gave it 3 stars. I honestly thought it was a little boring, but I'm determined not to give up on such a big author. So I decided to spend my pennies on Tress of the Emerald Sea, and hopefully I'm gonna like it a lot more than Mistborn. I'm just gonna say that. This book is stunning. Honestly, that's part of the reason that I really wanted to buy it. It's absolutely beautiful. But I've heard this is like Princess Bride with pirates. Not only that, but he wrote this book for his wife, I think during COVID. I mean, how adorable and sweet is that? Right there, I just wanted to own it. I thought it was so cute. I've heard you can actually read this one by itself. I am going to be giving this one a try. The green colors just automatically make me think of fall, and since there's pirates, I feel like I could definitely fall in love with this one. Okay, now we are going to get into some spooky, creepy middle grade books. This is definitely a genre that's totally new to me. I dabbled in it a little bit last year. I just didn't have time to fully dive into the genre, but because I don't love full-out horror, I feel like I could really get into some middle grade spooky books this year. I feel like near the end of the year, I always discover like a new genre. Last year, it was just full-out horror, but this year I feel like it could possibly be spooky middle grade books. So the first one is one that is very loved in the community. I think that's why I put it off so long, because I'm terrified I'm not going to be part of the group that loves this series, is Small Spaces by Katherine Arden. I have no idea what happens. I just know that there's a group of kids that go on a school field trip. I think they get lost or stuck in the woods, and there's this scary scarecrow. I do know that I did love The Bear and the Nightingale by Katherine Arden. I feel like because her atmosphere was so well written in that book that she's definitely going to be able to make some spooky vibes work for this one. We will see how this goes. I may end up binging the whole series. I have no idea, but I'm ready to start dabbling in some of her middle grade. Another author that I really love, I've only read part of this book, which I did start last year and I didn't finish. I don't know why I didn't finish it. I was loving it, is The Girl in White by Lindsay Curry. This one takes place on the coast, a spooky little rainy town. Our main character is starting to see people and things pop up in real life that she's only seen in her dreams before. We definitely have some very spooky, scary things happening here. I even still have my bookmark in this, which is such a pity. But I read the first 100 pages, got a third of the way through, don't know why I stopped. So I will definitely be picking this back up soon. Next, I have another really well-known, beloved series that I really have been dying to start for so long. I was so glad when I saw this at my local thrift store. That is Amari and the Night Brothers. Our main character in this book has a brother that is missing, and I think she goes on just this hunt to find him. She deals with a bunch of supernatural creatures, I believe, and I think she's just like possibly a ghost hunter herself, but it does sound super creepy, and I'm here to be creeped out, and it's middle grade, so could be my new favorite thing. I have one witchy romance that I would love to read this year, and that is The X Hex by Erin Sterling. I think I go back and forth with this one so much because I just lean too much into reviews of friends and people I know. I think I just need to read it for myself because this one could be really fun. Our main character accidentally puts like a curse or a hex on her ex-boyfriend and things start going haywire. I love a good like heartwarming witchy book, and I think that is going to be my vibe going into the fall. I have plenty of other witchy books to get into. This is definitely at the top of my list. And last but not least, speaking of witchy books, I have one cozy mystery that I absolutely need to read, and that is When the Crow's Away by Orly Wallace. I read the first book in the Company of Witches last year to this series, and I sobbed. I bawled my eyes out. I laughed, I cried. There are so many elements to this series. Obviously you have the mystery, but we also have our main character who is suffering from grief of losing her husband. She actually can see ghosts herself, but her aunts own this B&B and they find a dead body one day in the first one. Obviously they want to figure out the suspect who killed the lady, and you just go through the whole cycle of them eliminating people. But I just remember the first one being my first ever cozy mystery, and it was in my top favorite like 5 books of last year. I feel like this could easily come into place as a favorite this year if I would just finally read it. Well, my friends, that is my giant physical TBR that I would love to get through. These are just books that have been on my shelf for way too long, and if I don't read them, I'm gonna unhaul them. So if there is a book that you saw that you think I would absolutely love, please let me know, because I will definitely bump it higher on this list. I'm just so excited to jump into some more fall books in general. I feel like this helped me kind of consolidate or figure out like my top priority books other than new releases that are coming out, and I really want y'all to hold me to it because, like I said, I've got some old books on this list, but ones that I feel like I could definitely see being favorites of the year. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it inspires you to create your own fall list of priority books for yourself. Thank you so much for watching my video. I appreciate your support so much on my channel. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in my next video.